A Short History of Recording Sounds, Part 2. If you recall, in Part 1, we learned that flat disc records were invented in 1888. The record industry was born in 1889. What does record industry mean? An industry is a business or job that makes things. Many people are part of that job that makes the things. So the record industry is a group of people whose job it is to make records and sell them to the people who want to buy them. The names of the first of the record industries were Columbia, Victor, and Edison. Many years later, Victor became RCA and Columbia became CBS. Maybe you've heard of these names. Here are the logos of the record companies. A logo is a picture the company uses. There's Columbia, Victor, and Edison. Record companies began to mass-produce records. Mass-produced means the record companies were able to make a lot of records. People no longer bought pianos and sheet music. In the 1920s, they bought gramophones and records. When records were made, then famous singers became known and liked a lot. One of the first famous singers was Enrico Caruso, an Italian opera singer. In 1917, the original Dixieland Jazz Band is responsible for the first jazz recordings. Many things changed very quickly, and music changed with it. In 1925, scientists at Bell Labs made the first electrical recordings. These used electricity, microphone electronic amplifiers, and an electromagnetic disc recorder to make records. The sounds were easier to record and to hear when played back. In 1928, magnetic tapes were developed in Germany by Fritz Flummer. By 1935, this style of sound recording would become the industry standard for studios. Stereophonic sound was developed by an English electronics engineer named Alan Blumlein in 1931. He was frustrated that all the sound would come from one speaker in the corner of the movie theater, and he wished it would follow the characters across the screen as they were speaking. The advancement Blumlein made in sound are used widely today and are how we now experience most cinema or film and music. Fantasia by Walt Disney was the first commercial film to use the technology. In 1940, technician and guitarist Les Paul developed 4- and 8-track recordings called multi-track recordings. It would allow musicians to record vocals or instruments separately instead of recording everything at once. Major studios began to use the technology in the late 60s, and some of the first bands to release albums using this method were the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. Columbia Records introduced the vinyl records in 1948, and other major American labels started making them too. In 1953, commercial 8-track tape machines were invented. Les Paul continued to experiment. He commissioned Ampex to build an 8-track reel-to-reel commercial multi-track recorder. The cassette was introduced by Philips in 1964, and they began to dominate or take over the market about a decade later. The portable compact technology changed the music listening experience, and cars and trucks became equipped with 8 tracks and cassette players. People could now listen to albums while they were driving. The first commercial digital recordings were made in 1976. American scientist and Soundstream founder Thomas Stockham was the first to make a digital recording. Philips and Sony teamed up to make the compact disc, which was introduced in Japan in 1982, and then in Europe and America in 1983. The MP3 became popular in 1998. It could hold up to 8 songs. When Apple released the iPod, it replaced the MP3 player. You could have the songs you liked on your computer and your iPod. Napster came along in June 1st, 1999. Napster was a file-sharing service that allowed users to download music tracks for free. The recording industry sued to have Napster shut down, and the company went into bankruptcy in 2002. Napster paved the way for digital downloads and music streaming services. And now we come back to the beginning of our first video on sound, the streaming services. More information on the way sound was recorded will be available in the link below in the description box.